Imagine sitting down to play a 40-year board game.
Okay.
You've been told the rules your entire life
Right.
by the older players at the table.
Right, the ones who've been playing forever.
Exactly. So you study the rule book, you do everything right, you roll the dice, and you move your piece exactly where you're supposed to go.
Makes sense.
But halfway through your very first lap around the board, you realize something is terribly wrong.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. The bank is totally out of money. The properties on the board cost like 10 times what the rules say they should cost.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And the older players, they already own absolutely everything. Every house, every hotel, every railroad. It's all gone.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
Right. So how would you play that game? I mean, would you keep politely rolling the dice and handing over your cash? Or would you just flip the board over and start making up your own rules?
I think I'd be flipping a board.
Okay, let's unpack this, because welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a massive cultural and economic phenomenon that is, frankly, echoing across the World Economic Forum, lighting up Reddit threads and dominating financial circles.
It really is everywhere right now.
It is. We are talking about disillusionomics.
I love that term. It is a brilliant, highly descriptive word.
Yeah.
And what we are doing today is taking a massive stack of diverse sources, ranging from the measured academic perspective of British economist Alice Lassman to really calm, data-driven financial advisors like CardWise Capital.
And some pretty fiery stuff too, right?
Oh, absolutely. All the way to fiery, unfiltered commentary from YouTube personalities like Caleb Salvatore and some deep dive reporting from journalists at Fortune and Medium.
It's a huge mix.
It is. And what's fascinating here is how all these sources, despite wildly different tones, audiences, and political leanings, they all point to the exact same cultural breaking point. They are all describing what happens when an entire generation rationally adapts to a system that, well, it simply broke its promises.
Yeah, and as we dive in, a quick note for you, the listener, we are pulling from some highly polarized sources today.
Very polarized.
Yeah. You are going to hear us discuss perspectives that span from progressive left-wing academic theories to strongly right-wing anti-establishment viewpoints.
We'll touch on controversial political figures, fierce criticisms of modern parenting, theories about elite control, all of it.
Exactly. And we want to be absolutely clear up front, we aren't endorsing any of these political theories or the viewpoints or the figures mentioned.
No, not at all.
But we are going to lay them all out on the table impartially, because to understand this economic cultural moment, you have to understand the dialogue happening in every single corner of the internet.
Right. You have to look at the data, but also the raw emotional reaction to that data.
Exactly. So our mission today is to understand the why. Like, why is Gen Z checking out of the traditional economy?
And to do that, we have to start by looking at the surface symptoms.
Right. Like, what does disillusionomics actually look like out in the wild?
Well, the term itself, which was coined by Alice Lassman, who is notably a Gen Zer herself, by the way, describes a pattern of financial and professional behavior that, to an older observer, just looks like complete and utter irresponsibility.
Yeah, they see it and just think, wow, these kids are reckless.
Exactly. We're talking about things like doom spending, the YOLO economy, and this massive rise in dupe culture.
Okay, let's talk about dupe culture for a second, because I feel like this is wildly misunderstood.
It really is.
If you look at the Fortune reporting in our stack, they point out that Gen Z is actually hyper-value conscious.
Very much so.
They will happily trade down to cheaper, unbranded alternatives of luxury goods.
Yeah.
You know, the dupes, if they don't immediately see the value in the premium price tag. But older generations often look at this and think, oh, they just want to look rich, but they don't have the money. But that's not it, is it? I mean, it's an active rejection of brand capitalism.
Precisely. It is a total collapse of traditional brand trust.
How so?
Well, in previous generations, a brand name like Nike or Apple or Gucci implied a promise, right? A promise of quality, status, reliability. You paid the premium for the guarantee.
Yeah, that makes.
But Gen Z has grown up in an era where they can pull back the curtain on the global supply chain, mostly via TikTok.
Right. They see how the sausage is made.
Exactly. They see that the $300 designer t-shirt and the $15 unbranded dupe are literally manufactured in the exact same facility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with the exact same materials on the exact same assembly line. The mechanism of the premium price is totally exposed as nothing more than a marketing markup.
So dupe culture isn't about faking wealth at all.
No, it's about refusing to be manipulated by a brand's manufactured aura. They are hyper-rationalizing their consumption.
That is so interesting. And that rejection of brand loyalty, it perfectly mirrors their rejection of traditional corporate loyalty, doesn't it?
It really does. It's the exact same muscle.
Let's look at the employment data from Lastman's research, because the numbers here are just startling. They are treating jobs as situationships.
Which is such a great phrase.
I love that word so much. It's such a distinctly Gen Z concept applied to HR.
Yeah.
So a survey in our sources found that nearly 60% of Gen Z workers view their current job as a short-term setup.
Over half of them.
Over half. They have zero intention of sticking around. 47% plan to leave within a year.
Wow.
But this is the stat that genuinely blew my mind. Roughly 30% of them admit to simply walking out without warning.
No notice at all?
No 2-week notice, no transition document, no goodbye email, just straight up ghosting the workplace.
Now, when you view that statistic in a vacuum, it is incredibly easy to see why traditional managers are just pulling their hair out.
Oh, for sure. It looks like chaos.
It looks like an entire generation has decided to gamify the economy and treat real life like an app they can just delete when they get bored.
Right. But Lastman argues, and Earl Cotton's analysis of gig economy logic supports this too, that what we are actually witnessing is the inevitable late-stage commodification of everything.
Yes.
Walk me through that. What does the commodification of everything actually mean for, like, a 23-year-old at a desk job?
Well, think about the mechanism of the gig economy. Companies like Uber or DoorDash explicitly built business models based on treating labor as a strictly expendable, on-demand commodity.
Okay.
You turn the app on, you extract the labor, you turn it off. There are no benefits, no loyalty, no long-term commitment.
Just your transaction.
Exactly. And over the last decade, corporate America has increasingly applied that exact same logic to full-time W-2 employment.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, we see algorithmic hiring, algorithmic firing, mass layoffs executed via a pre-recorded Zoom call just to bump a quarterly stock price.
Oh, the Zoom layoffs.
Yeah.
So brutal.
Right. So if the corporation fundamentally treats the worker as an expendable commodity on a spreadsheet, the worker eventually learns the rules of the game. They learn to treat the corporation the exact same way. If you can lay me off with zero notice to appease shareholders, I can quit with zero notice because I got a better offer. It is a completely rational mirroring of corporate behavior.
Wow. Okay, but I want to push back on that, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
Because one of our sources, the YouTuber Caleb Salvatore, he brings up a totally different, much more visceral interpretation of this whole thing.
He definitely doesn't buy the macroeconomic theory angle.
No, not at all.
Huh?
He's not talking about algorithmic theory. He shares this anecdote on his show about going into a business and watching a 20-year-old woman walk in for a job interview.
Yeah, okay.
And she didn't come alone. She actually brought her dad.
To the interview.
Not to drop her off, but to physically sit in the chair next to her during the interview.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And Salvatore's argument is basically, look, are we giving them too much credit? Is this really a brilliant tactical rebellion against late-stage capitalism, or is there truth to the idea that this is just a profoundly coddled generation?
That's a heavy accusation.
It is. He argues that Boomer and Gen X parents overcorrected. They hovered. They snowplowed every obstacle out of the way, and they produced young adults who just lack the basic coping skills to handle anxiety, let alone professional independence.
Right.
So which is it? Is it a broken economy, or is it broken parenting?
It is a really provocative anecdote, and it highlights a massive tension point in our source material.
Yeah.
But rather than just labeling them as coddled or broken, we need to analyze the psychology behind that anecdote.
Okay.
What we are really seeing is a devastating collision between the expectations parents set and the harsh economic reality young people actually face when they step out the door.
Right, because I want to empathize with the parents here for a second, too. I mean, weren't those parents just operating on the 1990s playbook? The playbook that actually works for them.
Exactly. You have a generation of parents who, according to Salvatore's critique, shielded their kids from adversity.
Yeah.
But they did so because they believed in a specific mechanism of success. They promised their kids, if you just get good grades, go to a decent college, and get a degree, the world will welcome you with open arms.
A good job and a middle-class life are guaranteed.
Right. They believed that because in 1995, it was largely true.
Not anymore.
Not at all. When that 20-year-old steps into the job market today, the mechanism is completely broken. Entry-level wages haven't meaningfully outpaced inflation in 2 decades. The math to achieve basic independence just doesn't work.
So they're terrified.
The resulting anxiety is profound, and bringing a parent to an interview is a manifestation of that panic.
Wow.
Salvatore frames it as a lack of personal resilience. Lassman frames it as a systemic macroeconomic failure. But regardless of the framing, both sources agree on the outcome.
She does.
The traditional linear transition into self-sufficient adulthood is breaking down.
And that breakdown didn't just happen overnight. Like, I'm looking at the timeline in our notes, and it points to a very specific origin point for this trauma.
It is.
To understand why the Gen Z workforce operates this way, we have to rewind the clock to the 2008 Great Recession.
A pivotal moment.
Because even though Gen Z was young when it happened, we're talking about kids who were in elementary school, some were even toddlers.
Yeah.
The psychological shockwave hit them right in their formative developmental years.
Lassman is very articulate about this. She mentions that her first real conscious exposure to the concept of the economy was the 2008 financial crisis while she was in primary school.
Imagine that being your introduction to money.
Right. And for her cohort, it has felt like a perpetual state of crisis ever since. Think about the psychological impact of that.
It's got to be huge.
This is a generation that sat at the kitchen table and watched their parents or their older millennial siblings lose absolutely everything.
Yeah.
They watched homes get foreclosed on, they watched bank accounts drain, and they watched careers just evaporate.
Caleb Salvatore paints a really vivid, almost tragic picture of this. He talks about how this generation watched their parents and grandparents work for the exact same company for 40 or 50 years.
The ultimate company, men and women.
Yeah, these older workers destroyed their bodies, worked unpaid overtime, missed family dinners, and gave their absolute all because there was a handshake agreement.
Yes, the handshake agreement.
And the ultimate form of that agreement was the corporate pension. Can you explain the mechanism of how that actually worked?
Yeah.
And why its disappearance is so central to all this disillusionment?
It is arguably the most important shift in modern labor history.
Really?
Oh, without a doubt. A corporate pension, which is also known as a defined benefit plan, was a mathematical promise.
Okay.
The mechanism was simple. You give us your prime working years, and in exchange, the company guarantees you a set monthly income from the day you retire until the day you die.
Wow. That's real security.
It was paternalistic capitalism. The company essentially acted as your lifelong safety net.
But that's pretty much gone now, right?
Completely. Starting in the 1980s and accelerating rapidly through the 2000s, corporations realized that carrying the liability of thousands of aging, retired workers on their balance sheets was hurting their stock prices.
Oh, of course. The stock price.
Always. So they shifted the mechanism, they phased out pensions and replaced them with the 401k.
Which basically shifts all the risk onto the employee.
Precisely. A 401k is a defined contribution plan. The company might match a small percentage, but the burden of saving, the risk of investing, and the danger of the stock market crashing right before you retire.
Yeah.
All of that is now solely your problem.
That's terrifying.
And when the 2008 crisis hit, companies didn't just lay people off, they decimated retirement funds.
Right.
When teenagers watched their parents get fed to the lions the moment a massive corporation's bottom line was threatened, they internalized a very dark, very practical lesson.
That the bottom line is the only thing that matters. Salvatore has this great blunt line describing Gen Z's takeaway from that trauma. He says, "Mama raised a problem, not a fool. That ain't gonna be me."
It's perfectly said.
They see loyalty as a two-way street. I mean, if you demand my loyalty, but your mechanism for dealing with a bad quarter is to fire 10,000 people via a mass email on a Tuesday morning while the CEO takes a multi-million-dollar bonus.
Then loyalty isn't a virtue anymore.
Exactly. It's a con job. It is exploitation masquerading as company culture and ping pong tables in the break room.
And if we extrapolate that mindset, the situationship approach to employment makes perfect logical sense.
How so?
Well, if you firmly believe the system is a con job designed to extract your labor while offering zero security in return, your optimal survival strategy is to extract as much value as you can.
Like skills, resume padding, a quick paycheck?
Right. And then you move on before the company has a chance to exploit you. You do not invest emotionally in the institution. You withhold that investment as a psychological defense mechanism.
Okay, let me stop you there because here's where it gets really interesting. I want to make sure I'm wrapping my head around the scale of this.
Sure.
Because this lack of faith doesn't just stop at the HR department, does it? It bleeds into their entire perception of time, of the future, of planning.
It bleeds into absolutely everything.
Right. If you don't believe the institutions, the banks, the corporations, the government will hold up their end of the bargain, the very concept of long-term planning starts to feel like a trap.
Yes.
Like, why save for a retirement 30 years from now if you don't trust the banking system? Or if you think fiat currency is going to inflate into worthlessness? Or if you think climate change is going to upend society anyway?
Right.
This is the underlying mechanism driving doom spending.
It is the exact engine of doom spending.
Tell me more about that.
Traditional financial advice tells you to delay gratification, skip the vacation, save the money, invest it for a distant future.
Right, the classic advice.
But delaying gratification requires trust in the future. If your dataset tells you the future is a void, or at best an unpredictable mess, then optimizing for the present becomes the most rational choice.
That makes total sense.
You spend on experiences, on travel, on immediate consumption, because the present moment is literally the only thing you actually control.
Which leads us perfectly into the next massive weight around this generation's neck.
Yeah.
The debt avalanche and the education trap.
Yes.
Because we talked about the 1990s playbook earlier, the idea that a college degree was the ultimate foolproof safety net. Get the degree, secure the stable job, build the life.
The promised path.
But the mechanics of that playbook have fundamentally inverted. I am looking at the data from Fortune and CardWise Capital, and the numbers are just terrifying.
They are deeply sobering. Let's look at the debt load.
Right, so the average Gen Z adult is carrying roughly $94,000 in total personal debt.
Which is staggering.
Just to put that in perspective for you listening, that is significantly higher than millennials who carried about 59 grand at this age and way higher than Gen X at 53 grand.
So they are starting further behind than anyone else.
Exactly. So the generation that constantly gets lectured on TikTok about buying too many iced coffees and avocado toast is actually starting their adult lives almost six figures in the hole.
It's not the coffee.
It's definitely not the coffee. And let's look specifically at the student loan piece, because this is where the math gets really ugly.
Okay.
The average monthly payment for Gen Z is over $500. That's double the national average. They are holding around $23,000 in student debt specifically.
Right.
But here is the kicker, and this is where I want you to explain the mechanism. The debt is growing at almost 7% annually. How does someone make a $500 monthly payment and still have their overall debt grow?
It comes down to the brutal mathematics of compound interest on massive principal balances.
Okay.
Combined with the way student loans are structured, many of these young adults are on income-driven repayment plans.
Which sounds helpful on paper.
On paper, yes. The mechanism here is that the government looks at their very low entry-level salary and says, okay, you only have to pay a small amount each month so you can afford to eat.
Right.
But that small monthly payment doesn't even cover the interest that accrues that month.
Oh, no.
So the unpaid interest gets capitalized. It gets added to the principal.
Sure, the balance goes up.
You pay $500 every single month, but because of the 7% interest rate on a massive initial balance, your total debt load actually increases. You are shoveling sand against the tide.
That is soul-crushing. And while they are drowning in that compounding debt, they hit what our sources call the entry-level paradox.
Yes.
You graduate with 60 grand in debt, you walk out with your diploma, and you look for that promised entry-level job. But you arrive to find the job doesn't exist.
It's vanished.
Walk me through the mechanics of why these entry-level jobs are disappearing.
There are three primary mechanisms at play here.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, structural phasing out through globalization. Over the last 2 decades, companies realized that true entry-level work, basic data entry, simple coding, customer service, could be outsourced to international labor markets for a fraction of the cost.
Right. Why pay someone here when you can pay someone abroad much less?
Exactly. Second is artificial intelligence. The tasks that used to require a junior analyst fresh out of college can now be done by an LLM in 3 seconds.
Yeah, AI is just eating those jobs up.
It really is. But the third mechanism is the most frustrating for a new graduate. Title inflation and algorithmic gatekeeping.
Algorithmic gatekeeping, you mean like how resumes are processed?
Yes, applicant tracking systems, or ATS. When you apply for a job online, a human rarely reads your resume first.
An algorithm does it.
Right. An algorithm scans it for keywords and experience markers. Because employers are incredibly risk-averse right now, they don't want to spend money training a true beginner.
So what do?
They post a job titled Entry-Level Marketing Coordinator, But they program the ATS to auto-reject any resume that doesn't show 3 to 5 years of highly specialized experience.
It is a total maddening catch-22.
Yeah.
You absolutely need the job to get the experience, but the algorithm auto-rejects you because you don't have the experience.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, that student loan interest is compounding every single night while you sleep.
It never stops.
And this immense structural frustration brings us back to Caleb Salvatore's perspective. Because he takes this anger and channels it into some very extreme, highly polarized theories about higher education itself.
Right.
Again, we are reporting this impartially because it's a huge part of the cultural dialogue. Salvatore asserts that the entire educational industrial complex is essentially a systemic scam.
He does not hold back.
No, he doesn't. He argues that the system is rigged. But how did it get so expensive in the first place?
If we look at the historical economics of it, the explosion in tuition costs correlates directly with the federal government's decision to guarantee student loans.
How does that work?
The mechanism is simple supply and demand. Once universities knew that the government would hand an 18-year-old a blank check for tuition, the universities had absolutely no incentive to keep costs down.
So they just raised the prices.
They skyrocketed. They used that guaranteed money to build luxury dorms, state-of-the-art recreation centers with lazy rivers, and massively bloat their administrative bureaucracies.
The lazy rivers always get me.
Right. The cost of running the university exploded, and they passed every single cent of that cost on to teenagers who, by the way, legally cannot discharge that debt in bankruptcy.
That is just wild.
Yeah.
And Salvatore's critique of the parents in this dynamic is particularly biting. He doesn't just blame the colleges, he blames the culture of parenting.
Yes.
He compares a parent pushing their kid into an expensive, low ROI college degree to a husband buying his wife a $15,000 diamond necklace.
It's a striking comparison.
It is. He claims the degree isn't actually for the child's economic benefit, it's a flex item.
Yes, the bumper sticker psychology.
Explain that.
He argues that middle and upper middle class parents push their kids into prestigious, expensive universities primarily for their own social status, so they can brag to their friends at dinner parties or put the university sticker on the back of their SUV.
Wow. He is brutal about it. He says, and I'm quoting him here, "You're not going to school for $70,000 a year to get a degree in gender studies."
He views it as a parental failure.
Yeah, a parent fundamentally failing their basic duty to protect their child from a catastrophic financial decision that will haunt them for the rest of their lives.
But he doesn't stop there, does he?
No, he doesn't stop at the parents or the universities. He goes all the way up the geopolitical chain.
This is where it gets very controversial.
Very. He presents a theory that strapping youth with inescapable debt during their most fertile, energetic years is actually a deliberate agenda by what he calls psychopath elites for population control.
That is a very extreme claim.
The theory is that if you kneecap young people financially, they cannot afford to form households, they delay having kids, and you slowly depopulate the planet.
Now, if we strip away the conspiratorial framing of deliberate elite population control,
Right, let's look at the facts.
and we look strictly at the macroeconomic reality and the demographic data, the outcome is exactly the same, whether it is by grand evil design or just plain systemic incompetence.
The result is what matters.
The data completely backs up the demographic collapse. Earl Cotton's reporting highlights that an astounding 84% of Gen Zers carrying student loan debt are actively postponing major life milestones.
84%.
Yes, they are not buying cars, they are not getting married, and they are moving back into their childhood bedrooms until they are 26 or older.
That's a huge delay in starting their adult lives.
Exactly. By the time they finally chip away at the debt and establish some semblance of financial footing in their early 30s, the biological and financial window for traditional family planning has drastically shrunk.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate symbol of that traditional family planning. The house.
Yes, housing.
Because even if you manage to miraculously navigate the debt, even if you beat the algorithm and secure that elusive job, you are eventually expected to buy a home. That is the literal bedrock of the American dream.
It's how the middle class builds wealth.
Exactly. But for Gen Z, that dream feels mathematically impossible. And Lassman refers to the psychological fallout of this as downturn fatigue.
A very apt phrase.
Let's look at the housing multiplier, because this is where the math just gets cruel.
The historical ratio of housing costs to income is the crucial metric here.
Walk me through it.
Historically, in a healthy middle-class economy, a home cost roughly 2 to 3 times a family's annual gross income.
Okay, so if your household made $50,000, the house cost roughly $100,000 to $150,000.
Right. It was completely achievable with a standard 30-year mortgage.
And today?
Today, depending on the market, housing costs 5.5 to 12 times a buyer's annual income.
12 times. How does the mechanism of the housing market even get that distorted? Is it just inflation?
Inflation is a part of it, specifically fiat currency devaluation over time, which pushes investors to park their money in hard assets like real estate.
Sure.
But there are other massive mechanical factors. After the 2008 crash, Wall Street realized that single-family homes were incredible investment vehicles.
Oh.
So you have massive institutional buyers, private equity firms, real estate investment trusts buying up starter homes in cash, outbidding regular families, and turning them into permanent rental properties.
So regular people literally can't compete.
They can't. Combine that with restrictive local zoning laws that make it illegal to build dense, affordable housing in high-demand areas, and you have a massive supply shortage.
And what's the result of all that?
The average age of a new homeowner has skyrocketed to 52 years old.
52.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think about the psychological impact of that statistic on a 22-year-old. It is no wonder that 1 in 3 Gen Zers believe they will never own a home.
It completely removes the finish line. I mean, if you are running a marathon and you are sweating and exhausted at mile 2 and someone pulls up in a golf cart and tells you the finish line has just been moved to another state,
You'd stop running.
you don't keep running. You sit down on the curb. And in Gen Z's case, you sit down on the curb and you spend your race entry fee on something that brings you joy right now.
Back to doom spending.
Exactly. We talked about doom spending earlier, but this housing math is the true genesis of it. Why deprive yourself of a nice dinner or a concert ticket or international travel to save up for a 20% down payment that is inflating away faster than your salary can possibly grow?
It fundamentally alters the social contract.
Yeah.
And it ties directly back into the demographic shift we discussed.
Yeah.
9% of Gen Z in their 20s have already explicitly decided to delay or abandon having children entirely.
9%. That's almost 1 in 10.
Yes. Their reasoning is highly pragmatic. They refuse to raise children in tight, expensive, unpredictable apartment rentals where the landlord can raise the rent 20% at the end of every lease.
That makes total sense. You want stability for a kid.
Right. The economic commitments that traditionally rooted people to long-term careerism, the 30-year mortgage, the cost of a suburban family, are gone.
Wow.
And without those heavy financial tethers, they are untethered from the community and from the traditional civic structure.
So let me ask you a hypothetical. If you are told repeatedly by every metric that you are playing a game you mathematically cannot win, wouldn't you want to flip the board over?
I think most people would.
Which brings us to the intense political polarization we are seeing in this generation. They aren't just sitting quietly in doom spending. They are getting angry.
They are furious. And this is exactly what Lassman means by downturn fatigue mutating into zero-sum thinking.
Break down zero-sum thinking for me.
In a booming economy, people believe the pie is growing. If you get a bigger slice, it doesn't mean my slice gets smaller. The whole pie just got bigger.
Right. Positive sum thinking.
Exactly. But when resources feel infinitely scarce, when housing is locked up and wages are stagnant, the psychology shifts to zero-sum.
The pie is shrinking.
The pie is shrinking. Therefore, every economic and social interaction becomes a battle. The only way I can get a house or a job or security is if I take yours.
Someone else has to lose for me to win.
Exactly. This zero-sum economic frustration is the primary mechanism pushing youth toward political extremes.
And our sources show this happening on both sides of the spectrum. You see references to this demographic being increasingly drawn to polarizing anti-establishment figures.
Very much so.
On the far right, you have figures like Nick Fuentes or the broader Maguire movement, and on the far left, you have socialist thinkers like Mamdani. It's the horseshoe theory in action. The extreme left and the extreme right end up closer to each other than they are to the center.
Precisely, because the center represents the status quo.
And they hate the status quo.
The moderate centrist approach of slow, incremental institutional change feels like a death sentence when your rent is up 30% this year and your student loan balance is growing.
Yeah, tweaking the tax code by 1% isn't going to fix that.
They don't want that. They are drawn to figures who promise to radically upend or even burn down the current system. Because to a 24-year-old locked out of the housing market and buried in debt, the current system is already a burning building.
Man, that is bleak. So if the finish line is a mirage and buying a house is mathematically impossible and the system is corrupt, how are these kids actually paying rent today?
They have to survive somehow.
They can't just be doom spending and waiting for a political revolution. There has to be a daily income mechanism.
And there is.
Right. The defining feature of the Gen Z survival strategy is what our sources call income stacking. They are fighting back by turning their entire professional life into a giant, diversified portfolio of micro-income streams.
It is a remarkable, highly adaptive evolution.
It really is.
Earl Cotton's article provides some incredible case studies that map out exactly how this works. He introduces us to Chloe, a 24-year-old.
Tell me about Chloe.
Well, she did everything right. She got the degree, she got a full-time job at a marketing agency, but her full-time salary barely covers her rent and groceries.
So what does she do?
She stacks. She runs an Etsy shop selling custom digital planners. She does freelance voiceover work on Fiverr in the evenings. And she is building a course on TikTok growth strategies to sell as a digital product.
That is a lot of work.
It is. She isn't doing this because she loves hustle culture or working around the clock. She's doing it because it is the only math that keeps her head above water.
And then there is Carissa Ferguson, a 24-year-old musical theater performer living in New York. 1 year out of college, she has 5 different income streams. Five. She has made over $144,000 on Fiverr alone doing voiceovers, copywriting, and content creation.
That's incredible.
It is. She explicitly states that having multiple income streams means she never has to turn down a creative opportunity or take a toxic, abusive job because she's terrified of making rent. This is the cure to what the sources call single paycheck panic.
Single paycheck panic is arguably the defining economic anxiety of this generation.
I imagine.
Think of a traditional W-2 job, like an outdated centralized power grid. If you get all your electricity from one massive power plant and that plant goes offline, say, you get laid off. Your entire city goes dark instantly.
Yeah, it's a massive single point of failure.
When you have watched companies evaporate overnight, trusting one single boss to sign your checks feels incredibly reckless.
So they build a microgrid.
Exactly. They are putting up solar panels, wind turbines, and battery backups. If the Etsy shop has a slow month, the freelance copywriting covers it. 67% of Gen Z say multiple income streams are not just nice to have, they are absolutely essential for basic survival.
But wait, I have to ask. Running 5 side hustles on Fiverr, Etsy, and TikTok while holding down a day job sounds utterly exhausting.
It does.
Are we confusing a brilliant survival strategy with an express ticket to massive burnout?
Right.
How are they mechanically managing all this labor?
That is where the role of technology completely changes the game.
Okay, how so?
Older generations look at artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT or Midjourney and panic about job replacement. Gen Z looks at AI as a force multiplier.
Oh, that makes sense.
It is the mechanism that prevents the burnout you're talking about. 80% of Gen Zers with side hustles report using AI daily.
How exactly are they using it?
Let's say you are building an affiliate marketing blog as a side hustle. 5 years ago, you had to manually write 50 articles, research the SEO, design the graphics.
It would take months of labor.
Right. Today, a 24-year-old uses an LLM to generate the articles, an AI tool to optimize the SEO, and an image generator for the graphics, producing months of work over a single weekend for virtually zero marginal cost.
That is wild.
They are treating themselves as one-person corporations, and AI is their infinitely scalable, unpaid intern.
And the hustles themselves are fascinating. It's not just driving an Uber, which is basically just trading the depreciation of your car for a low hourly wage.
Oh no, they're smarter than that.
They are building digital assets. We are talking about content creation, thrift flipping vintage clothes on Depop, and selling digital products like Notion templates that generate passive income while they sleep.
Very strategic.
And my absolute favorite one, because it shows how ruthless they are getting with the rules of the real estate game, is house hacking.
Oh, this is a great one.
Explain how this works.
House hacking is a direct response to the housing crisis we discussed. Because they can't afford to buy, they leverage the rental market against itself.
Oh.
A Gen Zer will rent a large multi-bedroom apartment or house. They then chop it up, sometimes literally putting up temporary walls, and sublease the individual rooms at a premium to other young people. The combined rent from the subtenants entirely covers the master lease, allowing the Gen Zer to live there for free, or even turn a monthly profit. They are becoming micro-landlords to survive the macro-landlords.
That is just brilliant. Okay, so we've validated their anger. We've shown how the math is broken. We've seen how clever and adaptive their survival strategies are.
Yes.
But here is where we have to take a hard pivot. Because according to Dom at CardWise Capital, while the distrust of the system is completely 100% earned, the behavioral response that Gen Z is taking with their actual capital is ultimately a trap.
It is.
It is a trap of catastrophic financial self-harm.
This is the most crucial part of the entire analysis. CardWise Capital is very clear on this point. The map Gen Z was given is wrong. The institutions absolutely did break their promises, and the anger is entirely justified.
Right.
However, abandoning the foundational mathematical tools of wealth building out of spite or out of hopelessness is going to cost this specific generation millions of dollars in their later years.
Let's look at the investment data.
80% of Gen Z investors genuinely believe that high-risk speculative bets are their only realistic way to catch up financially.
That number is staggering. 80% think speculation is the only way out.
It's terrifying.
I'm looking at a World Economic Forum report in our notes that shows 42% of Gen Z investors hold cryptocurrency, but traditional retirement accounts, only 11%.
Wow.
They're nearly 4 times more likely to hold Dogecoin or Ethereum than a Roth IRA.
And here is where the math becomes merciless. The psychological appeal of crypto is completely obvious when you understand their trauma.
Right, it feels decentralized.
Exactly. There are no Wall Street gatekeepers, no suits telling you what to do, and there is the constant intoxicating allure of life-changing money overnight.
It's like a lottery ticket.
But the historical data of the average retail crypto investor is brutal. The mechanism of the crypto market relies heavily on hype cycles and, frankly, wash trading by whales. The volatility that makes crypto so exciting is the exact same volatility that causes ordinary, emotional retail investors to buy at the absolute peak of the hype and panic sell at the absolute bottom. The data shows they consistently underperform a simple, boring S&P 500 index fund.
CardWise actually does the math on this.
Yeah.
And it is a massive wake-up call. Let's talk about the mechanism of compound interest in a tax-advantaged account.
Yes, let's break that down.
If you take just $200 a month, which is less than a car payment, and put it in a Roth IRA, starting at age 22, investing in an S&P 500 index fund at historical market returns, you will have approximately $1.4 million by the time you hit retirement age.
It's the magic of compounding.
And because the mechanism of a Roth IRA means you pay taxes on the seed, not the harvest, that entire $1.4 million is withdrawn completely tax-free.
Which is huge.
But if you put that same $200 a month into the erratic, emotion-driven retail crypto experience over the last decade, you fall vastly, vastly behind. We aren't talking about a small difference in yield here. We are talking about creating a generational wealth divide.
It's a massive mistake.
But hold on, let me process this because I want to put myself in the shoes of a 22-year-old listening to this.
Okay.
If I know the institutions are corrupt, if I literally watched the banks melt down the global economy in 2008 with subprime mortgages, and then I watched the government bail out the bankers while my parents lost our family home,
Right.
why on earth should I trust Wall Street with an S&P 500 index fund? Isn't that just playing the rigged game and handing my money to the people who ruin the economy?
That is the most important question to ask, and this is the exact cognitive error at the heart of the Disillusionomics trap.
Okay, tell me why.
The expert at CardWise Capital makes a brilliant, vital distinction. There is a monumental difference between trusting a corporate promise and utilizing a mathematical engine.
Explain the difference.
A corporate pension was a promise. It required you to trust that human executives 30 years in the future would do the right moral thing and pay you out.
Right, and they didn't.
That trust was broken because humans are fallible and greedy. But an S&P 500 index fund is not Wall Street doing you a favor.
What is it then?
Let's look at the mechanism of an ETF. When you buy a share of an S&P 500 index fund, you are literally buying fractional ownership stakes in the 500 largest, most profitable companies in America.
Right.
When Apple sells 1 billion iPhones, or Amazon expands its cloud computing, or Visa processes 1 trillion transactions, they generate massive cash flow. Because you own the stock, You own a piece of that cash flow.
Okay, I see.
You are capturing the aggregate growth of human labor and technological innovation. You do not have to trust the CEO's moral compass. You just have to trust the mathematical reality of capitalism.
That makes a lot of sense.
And a Roth IRA isn't a promise from an employer. It is a legally protected account you completely control. The government legally cannot tax the growth upon withdrawal. You are separating the tool from the corrupt institution.
That is a massive perspective shift. Don't trust the bank, trust the math.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. If the old playbook of go to college, get a job, buy a house, get a pension is dead, what is the actual practical alternative? How do you play the game when the board is broken?
You need new moves.
CardWise lays out 5 specific, actionable moves that Gen Z can use to navigate this mess without shooting themselves in the foot for 2026.
These moves are highly pragmatic. Move number 1, as we just discussed, open a Roth IRA.
Right, the mathematical engine.
Yes, it is a mathematical engine you control. The mechanism of compound interest is so powerful that the 10 years between starting to invest at age 22 versus waiting until you are 32 is worth nearly $900,000 in lost compounding growth.
Right.
You cannot afford to wait for the system to be fixed.
Move number 2. Stop leaving money on the table with big legacy banks. Gen Z needs to move their cash and emergency funds into a high-yield savings account, or a HYSA.
This is such an easy win.
Let's talk about the mechanics here because it infuriates me. A traditional big bank is paying you 0.01% interest on your savings.
Basically nothing.
Basically nothing. Meanwhile, they are taking your deposits, lending them out for mortgages or auto loans at 7 or 8%, and pocketing the massive spread. That's fractional reserve banking.
Right.
But a digital HYSA right now is getting 4 to 5% APY. Why? Because digital banks don't have the massive overhead of thousands of physical branches and tellers. They pass that yield back to the saver.
It takes 10 minutes to open on your phone, and it is literally free money that requires zero investment risk.
Exactly. Okay, what's move number 3?
Move number 3 leans right into their existing correct instincts. Start one digital income stream to combat single paycheck panic. The instinct to build a microgrid of income is correct. The execution is what matters. Don't just trade hours for dollars driving a gig economy car.
No, build something scalable.
Right. Monetize a scalable skill editing, design, consulting, AI prompt engineering, and take back control of your revenue generation.
Move number 4. Reevaluate crypto allocations. The advice isn't to sell it all and hate crypto, but you have to look at your risk profile.
It's all about balance.
If you are 23 years old with 80% of your net worth tied up in a meme coin like Dogecoin and $0 in a tax-advantaged retirement account, you are statistically setting yourself up for failure. You are treating the casino like a savings account.
And finally, move number 5. Replace doom spending with intentional spending.
How do you do that?
The psychology of doom spending is using consumption to numb financial anxiety. Before dropping hundreds of dollars on a fleeting experience simply because the world is ending anyway, ask if that capital could be deployed as a tool to buy future freedom.
That's a great way to look at it. And while Gen Z is trying to implement these moves and figure this out, it is worth noting that employers are still completely missing the mark.
They really are.
The source data shows a huge comical disconnect.
Yeah.
Traditional managers and executives look at this behavior and conclude that Gen Z is just lazy and entitled.
Which is completely missing the point.
But they aren't lazy.
Yeah.
Chloe working 4 side hustles is not lazy. They just have completely different parameters for engagement.
Exactly.
They want flexibility, they want transparent pay structures, and they want remote options. Why? Because 56% of Gen Z actually believe that traditional W-2 employment will become completely obsolete in their lifetime.
They do not view employment as a core identity. They view it strictly as a transaction.
Yeah.
And if employers refuse to update their corporate hardware to accommodate this new operating system, they are going to lose access to an incredibly innovative, technologically fluent, and resilient talent pool.
So, as we zoom out and look at the scope of everything we've unpacked today, from the trauma of the 2008 kitchen table to the crushing mechanics of compounding student debt, from single paycheck panic to the sheer mathematical power of a Roth IRA, one thing is abundantly clear.
What's that?
Disillusionomics is not the sign of a spoiled, coddled, or whining generation. It is a highly adaptive, deeply resilient and rationally calculated response to a socioeconomic climate that systemically broke its promises.
It really is.
They are trying to survive in a house where the roof is caving in and the foundation is cracked. You cannot blame them for looking at that broken house, grabbing their tools, and trying to build their own shelter in the backyard.
It is a profound structural shift in how humans relate to labor and capital.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with a critical multi-trillion-dollar question to consider as we close.
Okay, what is it?
We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing how Gen Z is reacting to the current corporate power structure, but time inevitably moves forward. Think about the mechanics of time. If this generation is completely redefining work around multiple hyper-commodified income streams, relying heavily on artificial intelligence, and holding absolutely zero loyalty to traditional corporate structures.
Yeah?
What happens in 15 years when they age up and become the executives?
Oh, wow.
When they're the ones running the companies, making the rules and setting the algorithms, will they use their power to finally rebuild the stable, trusting institutions that they were denied in their youth? Or will the future economy simply become a ruthless, completely decentralized web of freelance microcontracts, where traditional employment literally ceases to exist?
That is the ultimate question. If you are forced to play a game where the bank is bankrupt, the board is rigged, and the older players hoarded everything,
Yeah.
what kind of game do you design when it's finally your turn to be the banker?
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep diving into the data, and we'll see you next time.